Hi, I'm Jansen. I'm the director of fitness here at the golf practice. Today we're going to go through CARS, also known as controlled articular rotations. And the point of this video is to help players and yourself get through a full body scan to be able to test, but also mobilize each joint individually. So there's going to be a lot that's going to be taken into this video. You can skip ahead to the timestamp below if you've already done this video before, or if you're familiar with CARS. This is something that you could do every morning before you work out, or you come in here into the gym before you swing and go through every single joint again of the body to be able to prime yourself for the workout. I'm going to go into a little bit of an intro here in the next clip about what CARS are, what's the point, what's the intent. And again, you can skip to the timestamp below to be able to start this video. Let's get started. I like to make the analogy that cars are just like brushing your teeth for your joints. All right. It's something that you should do every day to help keep them healthy, keep them clean, and keep them moving and working properly. Okay. If we ignore the range of motion that we can move the joint in. So, for example, if I can only lift my arm this high, well, if I don't use this range of motion on a daily basis, eventually it's going to come down to here. All right. If I use it, then I'll never use it. Then there's other techniques that we can use over time, such as pails and rails and other things that you might see out there in the industry. Uh, about how then we can gain more range of motion. But first, the foundation is again brushing our teeth before we even go to the dentist, right? So making sure that we use what we have, use it or you'll lose it. What I also like to say, and it's just the science, is that we're trying to get into the deepest tissues and the deepest capsular space of the joint. And why that's important is it starts to stimulate blood flow and get all the fluids and the tissue healthy at the deepest core level of a joint. And all movement begins from the joint, and the muscles and the tendons and the white stuff attached to it is also super helpful. But if we don't get into the deepest part, then certain points of the joint become unhealthy, and that's where people start to see limitations in their mobility and their flexibility. So again, brush your teeth every single day, move your joints every single day, use it or lose it. We're going to start now from the neck. We're going to work down all the way to your toes. And this is something that you can follow along with. One more thing before we get started is that as we go through this, you're going to see my range of motion is okay in some areas. It's better than others. If this is your first time doing it, please try to match my movements as slowly as and controlled as I do, but please don't try to get into the same ranges of motion that I get into because it might not be as beneficial for you as it is for me. All right. If there's ever any closing angle joint pain, so for example, if I move this way and there's a sharp pain, I'm going to immediately back out of that and get in contact with a medical provider, or you could call me. And then also, if there's ever any discomfort, that's okay. Work through it, work around it. Yes, we're trying to make a circle, but if that circle needs to look a little squiggly, that's a-okay. All right, so with that being said, work with me here at this pace. We're starting from head to toe. We're starting with neck cars. I always like to start cars in a strong standing position, trying to get as much arch out of my low back and as neutral spine position as possible. We're also going to be radiating from the core. And what that means is just creating pressure, abdominal pressure, but also friction against the ground. We don't need you squeezing super hard or max effort because again, we need to save energy for the rest of the body. So let's start to radiate about 50% in a nice stance. Here we go. We're going to start with the neck, bringing our chin down, and then we're going to look to the right and trace our chin on our collarbone. Once we hit that end range and we can't look to the right anymore, we're going to take our ear, we're going to dip it back to our shoulder. We're going to look up to the sky and we're going to bring it all the way to the other side. We're going to laterally flex there too. Bring our chin back down, trace that other collarbone. Now I'm back into that original position. I'm going to look forward. I'll move to the side for this next rep. I'm going to work the other way now. So again, radiating from the core, strong standing position, tuck the chin, rotate left, laterally flex, take your ear to the shoulder, look up and around. We're going to laterally flex and rotate to the other side. Find that collarbone, trace it back to center, and look forward. Again, if there's any pain, start to try and work around it. We're going to move right into the spine now. But before we move on, compensations that we see with the neck car, shoulder shrugging, moving of the jaw, which is kind of a funny one, and then also rotation from the thoracic spine. So we're always, again, trying to irradiate pressure so that we don't see any of those, shrugging or compensations, just trying to articulate the neck. Okay. The spine is the same way. I'm going to start from the side because I think this is the easiest one to start with. and start to work with. So start with extension from the spine and go as up as high as you can without punching forward. And then start to flex and round the spine. I want you to focus more on the middle part of your spine and the upper part of your spine. Don't worry about the lower part too much. And just start to extend and flex. And then from there, come back to a neutral position. I want you to rotate to the right and rotate to the left without moving the lower body. This is going to be challenging for some of you to do. There's all sorts of other options we can do with cars, but I like to do it freestanding. And even if you can only just do little movements, that's fine. Let's put all four of those together. We're going to add a little lateral flexion. So here we go. We're going to go up, then we're going to flex down. I'm going to rotate to the right. I'm going to laterally flex to the right. I'm then going to feel like I dodge a bullet, extending. I'm going to rotate and laterally flex to my other side. I'm going to flex forward, come back to a neutral position. I'm going to try and create a little more pressure this time. I'll do it face on. I'm going to go to the left now. Extend, flex, create that pressure, rotate left, laterally flex, extend, rotate to that other side, laterally flex, and bring it around town. This one feels like you're dodging a bullet. I maybe do one more rep to the right and then to the left. If that one feels good or you had challenging with just those first initial movements, maybe you just piece it back together with just those. Okay, we're moving on to wrists now. We're going to take our wrists, we're going to make fists. My elbows are at 90 degrees. And first, let's go up and down, extension and flexion. And then we're going to go to radial and ulnar deviation. So just moving from side to side like so. I'm going to go one wrist at a time here so you can see this. We're going to go up, inward, down, and around. And then up, out, down, and around. Really important that we don't see any forearm rotation or flaring of the elbow. I see people just go really, really fast on this one. Again, it's controlled rotation. So we're going to go into flexion, ulnar deviation, down into extension, then up into radial as we go back into flexion. And back into radial, extension, ulnar, and flexion. And again, I know some of these terms sound fancy, but I like to talk about it in the anatomical way. Hopefully, you maybe learn a thing or two and you can sound a little fancy. Not that we need to, but it is the movement of those joints. So I like to call it what it is. We're going to move to that other side, moving a little bit faster here, but again, being very particular and just kind of searching how much range of motion I have today. And again, you can think of this as a box too, right? I go down, sideways, up, sideways, down, sideways, up, sideways. And then that circle, excuse me, box can turn into a circle more fluid. That's the wrist card. Going to the elbow. I'm going to keep my elbows in nice and tight to my rib cage. I call this one flipping the pancakes. I'm going to fold up. I'm going to twist my hands. If I had mirrors on my palms, I'm going to feel like I have my palms folding back behind me and rotating down and extending the elbow joint. I'm going to bring those knuckles back up, find those mirrors so I can see behind me again, and extend back down. I'm going to flex, twisting the forearms, rotating them down, and extend all the way. This one's a great one if you're struggling with tennis elbow, golfer's elbow, any elbow joint pain. The forearms can rotate, and that is where the pain can come from. Sometimes it's from the elbow joint. And sometimes I'll do this and kind of floss it and move. Okay. You could go one at a time as well. We're going to move into the shoulder, which is another big one. I think the spine, the hips, and the shoulder are the big three. So we're moving in the shoulder now that the wrists and elbows feel good. All right. Creating that pressure, we're going to go one at a time. We're going to orientate ourselves with our palm. I like to grip and make a fist sometimes after I know where the palm is. So creating pressure, we're going to scoop up, coming across our midline. This is shoulder adduction. We're working up into shoulder flexion, and you're going to hit a wall at some point at shoulder flexion. Okay. Once you get there, that palm is now going to turn out to the side, and start to rotate upwards to the sky as you reach back behind you into shoulder extension. And so that's where you're going to get a really big scraping sensation as you reach back behind you. And work all the way back into shoulder extension. And I'm externally rotating as I come back into shoulder flexion and more external rotation as I come back to my midline. Let's go one more time on that right side. We're going to cross my body into adduction, up into flexion. I'm internally rotating as I rotate and reach back into extension. Palm is up to the sky, and I control it back down. Reach, palm to the sky, hand to the sky, and palm to the sky again. Going to make a different analogy here as we work through that left side now. We're going to scoop up. We're going to catch water in our palm. We're going to make a field goal sign. We're creating a lot of pressure here, pulling the rib cage down. We're going to dump that water out, and we're going to quickly catch it again, reaching behind us. Sometimes I'll let people bend the elbow and get arrested. Okay. Break out of the handcuffs, catch that liquid again behind you, make that field goal sign as high as you can, and catch that liquid again out in front of you. Let's do one more rep here on this left side. Let's do it with a fist. We're making that fist knuckles drive up, pressure, core, pull the rib cage down, internal rotation, reach behind. Nothing else is moving in my body other than my shoulder joint. Common compensations here are going to be moving through the hips, shrugging of the shoulders, and a number of other things. I've even seen people's jaws move around when they do this one, and a lot of leaning from side to side. Okay. From this point of view, if you need to airplane this one out to the side more, completely fine. Shoulder flexion is a pretty common limitation with that joint. With the shoulder joint, our scapular blades are just as important. So we're going to take our arms out in front of us, parallel to the ground, and out about 35 to 45 degrees. Straight spine, creating pressure. We're going to elevate our scapular blades, shrugging the shoulders up, pushing them forward, pulling them back down, cinching them together, and bringing them back up. So we got elevation, protraction, retraction, protraction, depression, retraction, elevation, protraction, depression, retraction. And I can make that go backwards as well. Another analogy is just feel like the choo-choo train is chugging forward and then it's going in reverse. Pinch, push, and roll. All sorts of different things you can think about, but just trying to articulate. Another way to do this one is from the side. Take your palms here and just make little circles with your hands on your thigh, moving the shoulder blades up, back and around, up, forward, and down. I like this one as well. This one helps with just the weight of your arm. Feels really nice. All right. I'm going to pause the video here as I'm going to adjust a couple of things to brace for our hips. Okay, great. Hopefully you could use that quick pause to finish up a couple extra reps, maybe on the wrist, the elbow, or spend a little extra time on the shoulder or perfect that spine cars, really the whole upper body there that we just finished. So we're moving now to our lower extremities. And I like to really have something to hold on to for this, whether it's a golf club, a PVC pipe, um, a bench, or a table, anything. You could do this at, on the counter, and you could take your hip to the side, or just use it. Again, I like to do it freestanding, and then we can refine it from there. But we're going to start to work into the hip car. This one is a little bit more complex, but let's get right to it. We're going to start to scoop up the heel up into the air. And this is starting to work external rotation of the hip, but also hip flexion. We're then going to work out into abduction. Okay. And then we're going to work into internal rotation of the hip as I kick back into hip extension. All right. I know this is a lot, but just stay with me here. We're kicking back and we're going to hurtle around, bringing ourselves back up into hip flexion and external rotation. And I'm going to come out of flexion and parachute back down. All right. From face on, this is what it's going to look like. I'm going to have to really brace here. Scooping up into external rotation and hip flexion, working out into abduction. I'm going to lower down just slightly, and then I can work in internal rotation better as I kick back into hip extension. Kicking back into hip extension, working back into flexion and external rotation. Couple things that we see, of course, are the big hip hike and the pelvis pushing forward. Again, the hip is a ball and socket joint. We want to just move that ball and socket joint in the socket. We don't want the pelvis shifting with this one, and the back arching would be another big compensation. Let's do the right side one more time. I'm going to try and cue it a little more simply. Scoop up your heel like an ice cream scoop. Drive your knee to the sky. Open up like a dog on a fire hydrant. Lower down like an elevator. Turn your femur counterclockwise. Kick back like a donkey. Kick back like a donkey again. Rotate your femur clockwise. Find that ice cream scoop and parachute down. Let's go into the left hip. I'm going to use a little bit of a brace. My left side's my bad side too, so that's why. We're scooping up the ice cream scoop. We're a drawstring from the ankle. We're in hip flexion. We open up, dog on a fire hydrant. I'm strong through my foot that's on the ground. I find a place where I can go into internal rotation and work into hip extension. Hip extension, I bring it back around, find myself in flexion again. Okay, one more time from face on, scooping the ice cream scoop, opening up, scraping around, kicking back. And again, guys, it doesn't have to be perfect. Some of you, this is going to be your first time ever going through CARS. Just getting through it the first time is really, really great. We're going to lower the bench now. I'd suggest taking a seat for these next few as we're going to start to work into our knee CARS and our ankle CARS. All right. First thing with the knees is that I want you to just take your kneecaps and start to massage the kneecaps around. If you can't move the kneecaps around, that's okay, but try to take your thumbs and work around the circumference there and the perimeter. And if you got really good kneecaps, you can move around like hockey pucks, which is kind of a crazy sensation. But we're just trying to break up that cartilage. What we're then going to work into, guys, is a knee car. So we're going to get into an upright position. We're still bracing. And I'm going to take my foot and flare it out. And I'm going to extend the knee as much as I can. And just do that a few times to get used to it. Okay. And then I want you to take the foot inward without cramping the toes too much. And I want you to extend and flex the knee as well. Okay. Just holding from behind my hamstring here for a little bit of support. Okay, shoulders down and back. I'm irradiating now. Let's start our first car. So we're going to go up and outward with the foot. Once I reach full knee extension, I'm going to rotate my foot in, rotating that tibia in, the shin bone, and I'm going to flex back down. I'm going to then extend right back up, rotate my foot, and flex the knee again. Pivot point is going to happen up at the top. Good. All right. Let's go into the left side now. Same thing, starting out, extension, and flexion. For me, I feel this one a lot in my calf muscles sometimes. And sometimes my toes will start to curl. You can probably see that there. I'm always trying to keep the ankle joint as soft as possible while I do this so I can really feel it in the knee. And quite honestly, I don't get a ton out of this one. Maybe I'm lucky and I have better knees than most, but I know I do deal with some left knee pain every once in a while when I'm swinging. So I do try to do these on a regular basis, whether I can have that intent in there or not. It really just takes a lot of mental drive to get into that joint. Let's talk about the ankle now. I like to hold myself, uh, upward like this. Again, straight spine position. I'm just kind of checking myself in the mirror, see if I'm in bad posture or not. And we're going to start to hold ourselves in the shin bone as still as possible so that it's not moving like it was with the knee car. And so now I'm going to drive my ankle up as high as I can. I'm going to externally, not externally, sorry, I'm going to pronate it out. I'm going to flex down or gas pedal down. I'm going to bring it in and then I'm going to extend it back up. Flex down. And I'm just, again, trying to make a circle kind of with my big toe. Big compensation with this one is just the toes trying to take over. And I can hear my ankle cracking and popping. That's totally fine with any of the joints. Snap, crackle, pop is completely fine. That's just that joint waking up. And again, that blood flow and getting that deep tissue work inside the joint and in that capsule. Same thing on the left. We're going to extend up the dorsiflexion. And then we're gonna bring the toe in, extend down and around, come back up into dorsiflexion, all the way down in the plantar. And we're just articulating that joint one movement at a time. The biggest one that you're going to feel limited in, y'all, is pushing down and extending up. All right. So plantar flexion and dorsiflexion. You'll feel the muscles in dorsiflexion on the front side of the shin. You'll feel the calf muscle pressing down. We really need to prioritize that for our squats and lunges, but really important for the golf swing as well. And then you can start to move, from side to side more. All right. And make those articulations. The last one is toe cars, and this one is challenging. Take your feet, take your socks off so you can see your feet. And this one is super challenging, but it's quite fun to do. So we're gonna, again, mental drive. I'm gonna lift all my toes up, and I'm gonna put them down, lift them all up, put them down. And then I'm gonna just try and spread my toes as wide as I can. And I know how crazy this feels or looks. Okay. Then I'm gonna try and take my all my toes up and just tap my big toe down while I do it. And then I'm gonna try and keep that big toe down and just move my other toes. And you can see I'm kind of messing up here a little bit. Sometimes I'll hold this down just so I can get the feeling. And again, it wants to go, but I love doing those big toe taps. And then you can try and do kind of the wave, touch the pinky toe, and do like this with your toes as well. Okay. Also, just picking things up with your feet, like trying to grab your socks, back up and bring them back to you. That's a great thing to do as well. And then we can do it on the other side as well. A lot of times I'll try and do them at the same time, and I think it's great coordination to go up here and try and touch both or tap both your big toes at the same time, keeping all the other toes still. Again, this one you just have to stare at your toes, and even if they don't move, if you feel like you're trying to move them, that's the intent of this one. Most of the shifting will come from the knees and the hips if you try to make a compensation. All right, y'all, that's going to wrap up our introduction into cars and going through all those joints in a fluid way, but still an educational way if this is one of your first times going through cars. And if it's not, congratulations on getting through it again. And every time I do a car, I do these every single day since I've ever learned how to do them. And even to this day, I learn just a little bit more about myself and how I can move those joints, how I can get into the range of motion I have, and make sure that I can keep the range of motion that I have. Because to me, that's a really motivating thing to have. I don't want to lose what I have and regress. I'm always trying to progress what I'm doing, not only in my golf, but in my body as well. So hopefully this was helpful. Please comment if you have any questions or reach out to me directly if you have any questions or want to go through a more intense or one-on-one assessment for your body using cars. Thanks.